She had no design degree, no portfolio, and no professional training. Just a brother with a TV show and the willingness to figure it out on camera, in front of anyone who happened to be watching. That woman is Ashley Morrill, the interior designer behind every beautifully finished cabin on Maine Cabin Masters, and the quiet engine who turned a renovation show into something people actually care about coming back to. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly what she gave up, what she gambled on, and why the choice she made when almost no one was watching ended up defining everything that came after. Maine is not a state that produces a lot of television stars. It produces loggers, lobstermen, people who know how to fix a roof before the first frost hits in October, and families who have been doing things the same way for 3 generations because the same way works. Ashley Morrill grew up inside that world. She was raised in central Maine, the kind of place where you learn what hard work looks like, not from a motivational poster, but from watching the adults around you do it every single day. Her brother Chase Morrill was already deep in the trades, a contractor who had spent years restoring the kind of old Maine camps and cabins that dot the state's lake regions. Weathered, forgotten, structurally sound but aesthetically stuck in 1974, Chase knew how to make them stand again. What he didn't know was how to make them feel like somewhere you'd actually want to live. Ashley was not chasing a design career at the time. She wasn't studying architecture or working at a decor studio. She was living the kind of grounded, practical Maine life that doesn't make for obvious television. But she had something that formal training can't always give you. A natural sense of how a space should feel when you walk into it. What belongs, what doesn't. What honors the history of a building and what respects the people who are going to live in it next. When Chase started developing what would become Maine Cabin Masters, he didn't hire a professional designer out of New York or Portland. He brought in Ashley. That decision, from his side, would matter. But the more consequential one came from hers. And that's when the decision was made, the one nobody around her saw coming. Agreeing to appear on a television show as its interior designer when you have never worked as a professional interior designer is not a small thing. Most people don't do it. Most people in that position either turn it down or spend months building credentials first, taking courses, finding clients, creating a portfolio they can point to as proof that they belong in the role. Ashley did none of that. She said yes to Maine Cabin Masters before any of that infrastructure existed. The show premiered on DIY Network in 2017. From the first episode, Ashley was the person responsible for taking Chase's structurally restored shells and turning them into finished, livable, beautiful spaces. Every design choice, the furniture, the color palette, the textiles, the way natural light moved through a room landed on her, and the audience could see all of it, including the parts that didn't go perfectly. That is the thing that gets overlooked in most coverage of this show. When a home renovation series airs, viewers see the reveal, the finished product. What they don't see is the decision-making process that happens in real time, on a working job site, with a production schedule that doesn't allow for unlimited do-overs. Ashley was building her design instincts under exactly those conditions. Under lights, on a deadline, with a camera documenting the outcome. She didn't have the option of quietly getting something wrong and fixing it before anyone noticed. Every room she finished was the final answer, and every season, more people were watching those answers. Most people who know this story stop here, but the real story starts right now. There are hundreds of home renovation shows. Most of them follow the same structure. Problem property, dramatic budget reveal, tearful homeowner reaction, closing credits. The formula is reliable. It is also, after enough episodes, completely interchangeable. Maine Cabin Masters avoided that trap, and Ashley is a significant reason why. The cabins on this show are not generic fixer-uppers. They are specific to Maine, to the way people in that state relate to the land, to family traditions built around particular lakes and particular porches, to the idea that some buildings carry memory inside their walls the same way old photographs do. When Chase's crew restores one of these structures, they are not just fixing square footage, they are preserving something that matters to someone. Ashley's design work understood that. Her rooms don't try to look like something from a catalog. They are deliberately rooted in the landscape outside the window. Natural textures, warm tones, materials that feel like they grew nearby, rather than arrived on a shipping container. That specificity is not an accident. It's a consistent creative point of view, built episode by episode across multiple seasons. What she also brought was a counterweight to the show's heavy construction energy. Chase and the crew are loud, physical, practical. Ashley's contribution is the moment the noise stops and you see what the noise was in service of. That balance between the work of building and the experience of arriving is what made audiences stay. The show ran on DIY Network before eventually moving with the broader slate of programming to Magnolia Network, expanding its reach to a new audience that was already primed for exactly this kind of content. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me, because this next part is why the whole story matters. Here is something worth sitting with. Ashley Morrill did not walk onto the set of Maine Cabin Masters as a finished professional. She walked on as someone who believed she could do the job, and then she did it, over and over, across season after season, in front of an audience that grew larger each year. That is a different kind of credential than a diploma. It is also a harder one to fake. The design choices she made in early seasons are visible to anyone who goes back and watches. They are good choices, but they are also the choices of someone still calibrating, still learning what the camera sees versus what the eye sees, still figuring out how her aesthetic translated into spaces that had to photograph well and live well at the same time. Over time, that calibration became fluency. The rooms got tighter. The point of view got sharper. By the middle seasons of the show, Ashley's design sensibility had become one of the most recognizable things about Maine Cabin Masters. Viewers who had watched multiple episodes could identify her work without being told whose it was. That is not something you can manufacture. It comes from doing the same thing enough times, with enough genuine investment, that a signature emerges. She also built something else during those seasons, a direct relationship with the show's audience. People who watched regularly didn't just like the finished cabins. They were interested in Ashley specifically, in how she thought about a space, what she chose, why. That audience attention is a form of currency, and it would matter later. Here's what the comments kept asking, and here's the answer they never got. Until now, the question that surfaces repeatedly in fan communities around Maine Cabin Masters is some version of the same thing. Can you actually hire Ashley, or buy what she uses, or get closer to what she creates on screen? The answer is yes. And the path to that answer runs directly through the decision she made in 2017. Ashley Morrill designs grew out of the television exposure. As the show's audience expanded, so did the recognition of her work. She translated that recognition into a real design business, operating out of Maine, rooted in the same aesthetic that viewers had watched develop on screen. The business is not a side project or a licensing arrangement with a big brand. It is her actual work. Clients, spaces, the hands-on process of designing interiors that reflect both the client's needs and the environment they're living in. That distinction matters. A lot of television personalities build brands that are essentially merch stores with their name on them. Ashley built a practice. The show gave her the platform, but the platform only converts into something durable when the underlying skill is real. Hers is. The business also gives her something the television format doesn't: creative control. On Maine Cabin Masters, the cabins belong to clients and the production has its own requirements. In her private design work, Ashley sets the terms. That autonomy, earned through years of public work, not handed over, is what allows her to keep growing as a designer beyond whatever the show's next season brings. At this point in the story, most people walked away. What she did instead is the part nobody talks about. Ashley did not build any of this alone, and the person beside her through all of it is Ryan Eldridge, her husband, and a crew member on Maine Cabin Masters himself. Their relationship gives the show something that is genuinely rare in renovation television: a real couple, working in the same space, on the same projects, with the same investment in the outcome. Ryan's role on the build side and Ashley's role on the design side aren't just professional partnership. They are a shared life made visible. The audience can see that dynamic even when it isn't the focus of the episode. This matters for a specific reason. A lot of what makes Maine Cabin Masters work is the authenticity of the people in it. Chase Morrill is genuinely what he appears to be, a Maine contractor who loves what he does. The same is true of the crew around him, and the same is true of Ashley and Ryan. They are not performing a version of themselves that was developed for a camera. They are people from this place, doing work they would be doing in some form regardless of whether it was televised. For Ashley, Ryan's presence also provided something practical: a partner who understood the pressures of the work, the production schedule, the gap between what a project looks like halfway through and what it becomes when it's finished. That shared context is stabilizing in ways that are hard to explain from the outside, but easy to see in the consistency of her work across many seasons. She never talked about this publicly, until now. Most coverage of Maine Cabin Masters centers on Chase. He is the lead, the face, the name and the title of every article about what the show has meant for Maine's tourism and cottage industry. That coverage is accurate. Chase Morrill built something remarkable. But there is a story inside that story that gets less attention. Ashley made a career move that most design professionals would consider reckless, stepping into a highly visible role without the traditional qualifications for it, in a format that documents every outcome permanently. And she made it work not by being lucky, but by being genuinely skilled at something she had never formally studied. The self-taught designer, who builds a recognizable body of work in public, over years, on camera, without the credential infrastructure that normally validates that kind of work. That is a specific and underreported kind of achievement. It requires something that formal training doesn't guarantee: the ability to trust your own eye when there is no rubric to check it against. Ashley also represents something particular about where design talent actually comes from. The design world has a credentialing culture. Schools, certifications, firms, portfolios built in controlled conditions. All of that matters, but it is not the only path, and Ashley Morrill is a working example of what a different path looks like. Slower to build, publicly tested, and ultimately just as legitimate. For viewers who followed her from the beginning, that arc is part of what they were watching, not just the cabins. The person building her craft in real time, one finished room at a time. One phone call, one conversation. That's all it took to change the direction of everything. As of the mid-2020s, Maine Cabin Masters has remained a consistent presence across its network run, with Ashley a fixture in every season. The show has not lost the thing that made it work: the specificity of place, the genuine connection to Maine's built landscape, the family dynamic at its center. Ashley's design business continues operating alongside the television work. She has not traded one for the other, which is notable. A lot of television personalities phase out the original work once the platform gets large enough. Ashley has kept doing both, which suggests the design work isn't a product of the show's success so much as something parallel to it, running on its own terms. The audience that grew around Maine Cabin Masters has also stayed loyal in a way that is increasingly uncommon for reality television. Shows in this genre often peak in early seasons and decline as the novelty fades. This one has maintained its viewership, in part because the people in it are still the same people, not polished into a different version of themselves by the exposure, still rooted in the same place and the same values that made the first season worth watching. Ashley Morrill is still in Maine, still designing spaces, still working with the same crew, the same brother, the same husband she started this with. That consistency, in a television landscape that rewards transformation and punishes stasis, is its own kind of statement. There is something worth naming clearly at the end of this story. Ashley Morrill did not become a designer because a television show validated her. The television show found someone who was already, in the most essential sense, a designer, and gave her a stage large enough for the audience to see it. The decision she made in 2017, to say yes without a safety net, paid off because the foundation under that decision was real. Taste, instinct, the ability to look at a raw space and understand what it wants to become. None of that came from a camera. It was already there. The camera just documented the proof. What comes next for Ashley Morrill looks a lot like what came before. More seasons, more cabins, more design work that carries her specific point of view forward. The business will keep growing. The show will keep running. And viewers who have been watching since the beginning will keep getting exactly what they came for: the finished room and the person who made it. Do you think Ashley's story is actually more interesting than Chase's, or does the show only work because of how they balance each other? Let me know below.